My name is Timothy Rhino Rudd. The following is a recording of myself and my friend and mentor, Norm Roth. He consented to recording up front and has agreed that I can share this portion of the tape publicly at this time. I see you, Syracuse. Let's go. Thank you for meeting with me. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
And then I just want to talk a little bit about our relationship so far. In many ways, you've been like a real mentor over years, right?
Yes.
I drive probably 1 million miles over the last 12 years, and I often call you. And there's times we talk for literally hours, and I appreciate all that. You give good advice, thoughtful, smart, all that stuff. And that's kind of the context for me being give me a little bit of wiggle room here, which I appreciate.
I have 3 bagels. They're all everything bagels. One has strawberry cream cheese, one has vanilla or just plain cream cheese, one has no cream cheese.
Okay.
You
cool.
take.
Do you want any?
Yeah, I'm gonna have one.
Yeah, which one would you like? You pick. I'm really not gonna eat dairy, but I'll happily take one to go.
Okay.
Or if I get hungry in the middle. But for the moment, I would rather you eat. And
Okay.
When I was driving over here and I was thinking about the start, I was thinking about all the drives.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's Norm going to say? Norm's going to say what he usually says, which is okay. Because that's what you say when we drive and talk a lot of the time, right? It's you go, okay, and then you ask questions and you give advice. So that's why I kind of think this works. So in practice, maybe I give a little more context about the last couple months first. Essentially, a whistleblower showed up in my office with a staffer and the deputy mayor November 6th with a report with allegations of MWBE fraud. And then as soon as I got it that day, I basically was like, this doesn't make sense because this contract wouldn't have a goal. And I went to my boss, who was Frank Kaliva, immediately. And I've never really viewed him as a trustful person. So I kind of thought I had the information advantage for a moment. And I just went up and I said, actually in the council chamber that day, there was a meeting, and often the senior staff and all the directors are there. And I just sat in the pew the way I often do, and I said something to the effect of Frank, there was this person who just came in alleging MWBE fraud on this one contract, but it doesn't make sense because it's our money. It's not a state grant, and it's a professional service. So the way our rule is written, it says if you're sufficiently diverse, exceeding this 30% goal of diversity, women and minorities, you don't have to subcontract. So I instantly was like, well, this company it's a national company that would exceed the targets very easily, so why would this happen? So it didn't make sense. So when I spoke, I said, it doesn't make sense. And he said, well, it's definitely not MWBE fraud, because the truth is the company, they had called me and they said they have a non-compete with another company we do business, and they're not able to do above a certain threshold of work with us. So they needed a pass-through vendor, and I accommodated them. And while that might not seem like the smartest decision now, and he basically said, and I'll tell you this now, but I'll never, ever, ever admit it again, but that's what happened. And so I was instantly oh my God, it's not MWBE fraud, it's corporate fraud that was enabled by. So I've gone through. So essentially, it goes to the Corporation Council. They start an investigation 15 days in, so November 21st, I write a privileged and confidential email to the Corporation Council and the First Deputy Corporation Council with essentially documenting my conversation with Frank Kaliva and all the financial stuff I learned after that. Because essentially, everything I observed after that corroborated what he said, right? I was oh wow, this is, and I in the book, the whistleblower book's 200 pages of emails and documentation, and essentially this local woman vendor was given a $1.8 million waiver and was never engaged by the city. Was literally treated as though she was a prime, treated as though she was a sub, and the subcontractor, that's a big national outfit, was treated as the prime when they were in fact the opposite. And that all the evidence supports that, right? So I send the email the 21st. They continue the investigation. Once I send the email, it becomes very tense, right? It's and in many ways, the first day, November 6th, the first day, I came home from work, and I told my wife the story. And and my wife said, I was like, gonna go do the trash or whatever it was. I don't remember. Something I had to do. And she's like, no. Whatever you gotta do, you go call the mayor right now. All right? Call the mayor, he doesn't answer. I text him. I say, hey, give me a call if you can. It's like 7 p.m. He calls me back right away. I say, FYI, here's what happened today. I tell him exactly what I essentially just told you. And I say, in my experience, Frank is not trustworthy. I don't know what he tells you or doesn't, but I need to know that you know what he told me. And then I'll be able to be okay, right? And that's kind of what gave me the confidence to wait from November 6th to November 21st to send to my written thoughts. So, I don't remember at what point, but at some point during they do investigation, the CFO and I have been in like lockstep on everything because we're like, oh my God, look at this. Oh my God. And he's both of our bosses, right? And then you happen to have the project involved is an absolute bomb fire, right? It's like the project, I would almost say, is it's just not real in a way. And it's $10 million over 5 years for a product that doesn't work, like at all. And Frank has been, all strings go to Frank across the board. And it's really, so they investigate it by doing interviews. That's all they do. They interview me, they interview the CFO, they interview people who work with them, they interview the IT people, they interview Frank. I would say it relies and then they schedule a meeting. The mayor, like at some point, I'm like, when is this the mayor says, we're taking it seriously, we're gonna have a meeting to address this allegation of fraud, of procurement fraud, right? And in my initial email, I said, I basically give 3 recommendations, and it's like, 1, terminate the contract with this company immediately, because the company that was the sub ends up becoming the prime via a waiver with testimony that is largely false from Frank Kaliva to the council. So, but it drags out. Oh my God, can you imagine the stress? So you got this project. In this time, Frank doubles down. He announces a launch. He sends an all users email saying this product is gonna launch January 1. And I've been telling everyone involved, like it was supposed to be an October 1 launch. And I started going to Sharon and saying, this is fake. It's not ready. Talk to anyone but Frank. Talk to anyone but Frank, which they don't do. And you'll know this is fake. It's not real. It's never gonna happen. And we had a similar fake launch 2 years ago. There was a total failure. So at some point, I may have to plug my phone in, but right now I got a lot of juice. So crazy stressful, right? Crazy stress from the 21st, really from the 6th, but definitely the 21st, it heats up, which is like Thanksgiving, all this stuff. And then eventually the mayor says, Corporation Council has prepared a memo. We're gonna schedule a meeting. He tells me this on, let's say Friday the 6th of December, which is like torture, because he schedules it for Friday the 13th, a week from then. So he's like, we're gonna have a meeting with you, the CFO, Frank, the 2 lawyers, the mayor and the deputy mayor. And so that is a whole lot of buildup, right? And there's a whole lot of tension. And then we go to the meeting and they have a memo that they read to us. They don't share with us. Us mainly being the CFO and I, right? Like I definitely think everyone else read the memo and predetermined everything. But anyways, so the mayor says, Sue's gonna read the memo, and who's the Corporation Council, and we're gonna, if you object to anything, object. And if you object to anybody's objection, object. Now's the time. He says, we're not talking about mismanagement. This is not about mismanagement. We're coming in the room for one thing and one thing only, to address the allegations of procurement fraud. And he says, we have a memo that says there is no procurement fraud. So we go through the memo, and there's a number of, I'm just gonna say material errors, like all kinds of, and then in it, there's a point where Frank Kaliva, because the project was initially funded with state money, we basically waste the state money. Then we have to go forward. So at that point, he starts getting waivers and never really acknowledges the money has been drained. And, oh, forget it. The vendor is EY, which then you know it's Ernst & Young, but it doesn't sound, it's just EY. So, so EY was working for the city for a long time without a contract, without a mechanism to pay. And they say that, like they would call it industry standard. I would say it's systemic fraud, but they often approach local vendors to push work through if they're on a pre-existing contract. So we did have some type of general IT services RFP that was done that this woman vendor had won. Or not won. We awarded it to everyone who applied to have the flexibility to work with them, but it was for $155,000 or something like that. So the idea that you're going to push millions of dollars through it is not copacetic, right? Like that shouldn't occur. And in the end, that didn't really happen because we made them get a waiver to do business with the woman.
Yeah.
We didn't actually totally give it that way. They were, in my opinion, there was no relationship with Advanced IT didn't do work on that contract. They were only approached for the purposes of a pass-through, which was known by my boss. Anyways, I can't give all the details are too overwhelming to get to where I want in a reasonable amount of time. So, but you get in the general gist of it. So the 13th, let's just say we go through, there's a bunch of objections, and yet the mayor and the deputy mayor both lean in to essentially say, this is all normal. Like, almost like, how could we not give it to the woman vendor, right? And I was like, oh, they just gave him total, like I just got steamrolled, right? Like that's how I felt. And at that point and like Norm, I got energy. So I was like going to the gym every day at lunch. I was doing like 120 push-ups before I went in that room so I'd be able to sit in my chair, right? Which I did. But anyways, I'm like, oh wow, this is unbelievable. I can't believe this is how this meeting's going. Like there's material errors in the memo. The CFO and I are the only ones who know anything. Right? Like it's clear that the deputy mayor and the mayor haven't read the book because they don't want to. So like, and the CFO didn't read the book either. I had the book, right? And then we had the financial information, and then he had access to a lot of the emails because he's more involved in that project. I'm not really involved in that project. Anyways, at the end of the toward the end, like 45 minutes in, the mayor, after he's laid out full cover, but Frank had kind of like leaned, in my opinion, a little too far. When he was addressing me, he was like, this is Tim being Tim, where he assumes everything and he thinks he knows everything when he doesn't know anything, and this is what he's done all the time, and blah, 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 blah. Just really leaned in a way that wasn't really necessary. Like, he could have just said, like, whatever. Anyways, the mayor says, okay, so before we end the meeting, does anybody have anything else to say? Let's say it now or we're not saying it. I'm basically like, well, I'll take one last shot. And I'm like, the way you're sitting directly across from me is basically how Frank is sitting. And we're all around the table in the mayor's office, conference room. And I just look at Frank dead in the face. And I say, Frank, a lot of people want to make this about me versus you. But it's very clear to me that my worst enemy is definitely myself. And I suspect that you are also your worst enemy. And I said, and I want to just disclose that I don't trust you, right? Like, I feel that you lied to me when I was on the council. I feel that you've lied to me in my job. I feel that you've misrepresented my work at different times. So, why do I think the things I think? It's because the day the person came in with the report, I went upstairs in the council chamber and I asked you about it. And you told me, well, it's definitely not MWB fraud, and I'll never say this again, but somebody from UI called me, and they had a non-compete. And I accommodated them, and that doesn't seem like the smartest decision now, but whatever, that's what happened. And I said, in that moment, I just went back, and I looked at everything. And everything corroborates that. Everything. All the emails, all the numbers, the project, and I can't unsee it. So the truth, that you told me the truth, and you should have lied to me one more time, because I never would have figured it out. But you told me the truth, and I can't unsee it. And Frank erupts, right? He's like, boom! What's he say? He says, these are serious allegations, blah, 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 blah. You're gonna ruin my career, blah, 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 blah. And he stands up and he basically screams, "I'm done with you." And then he like slams on the table and he's like, "I'm done with you." And at that moment, it was like the flood of everything. I had almost like meditated on this moment, right? Like I literally the days before, I was like, what will it feel like to have Frank erupt in the meeting, right? Because he's erupted on me in the past. He uses like eruption and physical intimidation as a method of management. Like,
that's funny because what he claimed. Well, I don't know
the mediation. Yeah. It's a joke within a joke. Like it was like there was like his resignation was written by the Onion. It doesn't make anyways. Yeah. So in that moment when he's over me, I just look him in the face. And because I had all the conversations, right? I talked to my wife, talked to my family. I'm like, this might be my last day, right? Like, this might be the end. And I just go, I'm not done. And it felt like the whole universe changed, right? And he goes, "Wah!" And he grabs the door and he slams it as hard as he can and leaves. And then the mayor's just kind of like, well, that was something. Knew it was a possibility, but that was something. And then the CFO just digs in. Mayor, we're talking about $10 million. Because at that point, they hadn't even, we're figuring it all out. And there's a point before that meeting where, like, let's say a couple weeks before, sometime before that meeting, where the deputy mayor comes to me and says, "Tim, Chris Libinati, a reporter,
I know Chris.
He's like, just foiled the EY contract." Did you tell him to foil the EY contract? Which, by the way, foiling the EY contract does nothing, because, like, you can't understand from the contract. That has nothing to do with it, right? So, the truth is, I hadn't talked to Libinati in like 6 months. The last time I talked to him, I tried to get him to rent an apartment from me, right? Like, and he didn't want it because he likes the situation with very cheap rent that he has and whatever, even though I thought it was a good possibility for him. But that was the last time I talked to him. I hadn't said shit to him. But I respect Libinati in a way, and then she just accused me of giving it to him. So as soon as she left,
giving him the concept, the idea,
telling him something, telling him to look. And now, retrospectively, I know who told him to do that. It doesn't really matter. Definitely not me. But anyways, the moment she left, what do? Call Libinati, right? I'm like, "Chris, you're rattling cages," because we talk about I talk to him other times, and we talk about rattling somebody's cage. Because people, they get scared and they do irrational things when they're doing stupid stuff and their cage rattles, right? And he's like, "Oh wow, which one?" Because he had submitted like foils for all his things for EY, a bunch of stuff. He's like, "Which one?" And he's like, "Which?" And I was like, "Oh, it's EY." And he was like, "Okay." And that was it. I hung up. And but it's funny because there's a lot of moments like that where I hadn't done anything and they accuse me of something and almost like gives me the idea, right?
Oh, of course. So what are they trying to hide?
Oh, what are you trying to hide? Which is part of me like being like, people. So this will make more sense as we go. But so I'm like, he's toast. Like I've been talking to all my peers that work for Frank. They all know. It's like everyone's fed up with that guy. He's a liar. He's this. He's that. And I go over to have a beer with Cannizzaro, who's been stressed, the CFO, to like a T, right? Like this dude, he sent me his heart rate during the meeting. Yeah. It's like he's on the verge of having a heart attack, and you can see the door slam in his heart rate. It's like boom, boom at the exact time, right? So it's just not a healthy environment. But so then I go across the street to Wolf's, and I'm just like, in a way, ecstatic, right? Like there's the 5 people who all are like, "What happened?" And I'm just like, and I only have like 10 minutes because I gotta go pick up my kids at 5:30, and I'm basically like, "Woo!" And I'm just like, whatever, because it's all the people, and then Cannizzaro comes, and I end up just like giving hugs, and I'm like, I made it, and I just like leave. Like I have one beer, and I go to get my kids, and then everyone just sits and talks about it with Cannizzaro, who's like a more reserved and thoughtful person. But then I just sit back. I go wait to see what happens, right? Even though I'm anxious as shit, I want to be like, I can't ever work with Frank Leva again, blah 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 blah. Anyway, so on Sunday, the mayor reaches out and says, "Are you able to meet with Sharon and I on Monday at 11?" And I'm like, okay. And so I go to meet, and like I'm thinking about it, right? I'm talking to a couple people who are trusted advisors, like what the fuck are they gonna do, right? because there's way fewer people. They've gotten rid of the lawyers. They've gotten rid of the CFO.
Right.
They've gotten rid of Frank. It's now just the mayor and the deputy mayor, right? And I'm like, are they going to say Frank's resigned or resigning, or is it going to be something else? And it ends up being something else. So it ends up being, like, they start the meeting. They're like, well, I think the mayor, it's mostly the mayor. The mayor is like, well, it's clear to me that you've ruined your relationship with Frank Kaliva, and that you probably can't work with him ever again. And I'm like, what? Okay, you know what I'll agree to? I'll agree that my relationship with Frank Kaliva is irreparably harmed. I'll give you that. And he goes, yep. And that leaves us with some choices, which you're probably smart enough to imagine. Right?
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, okay, right? Like, he starts with a threat. And Norm, like, we have, like, mentor relationship, right? Where it's, like, pretty equal. But, so you probably know, but I'm not good with threats. Right? Like, I'm, like, a bad person to threaten because it almost causes me to, like, hold my ground, right? It's like I will die on an anthill for very little if it's about the right thing. But, so anyways, it keeps going. It's like, he's like, so can we trust you? And I'm like, can you trust me? What are you talking about? Can you trust me? Like, and he's like, would you put us in jail if you could? And I'm like, I've been here for 4 years doing this job for you. I haven't put you in jail. And he goes, yeah, but maybe you just didn't have this chance. Right? And I'm like, what? And we go through it, and I'm like, look, I don't know what you're looking for me to say.
I hope you're recording that conference. Well,
let's just say I did not, but let's say that I've made an environment where they think I have.
Okay. That could be better.
But that takes some time to get to that point. Because I don't actually have the paranoia. Like, I've never recorded our conversations. I've never recorded any conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just haven't had to do that. Even though I've had people who, when I took the job, who said, hey, if you ever get in a room, that guy's, just turn on your phone. It only takes one person to consent in New York State, right? But that kind of makes me uneasy doing it that way, which is why this is above the table.
So, one question with Kaliva, but you really had no. What interaction did you have with him in 4 years? None.
Kaliva?
Yeah.
He's my direct boss.
Oh.
There's a senior staff group, which is the 5 people. So Frank oversees the CFO, the budget director, the personnel director. Okay. He is the ethics commission. He oversees all of IT, all of digital services.
Okay.
All those go directly to him, and they get the Frank filter. Okay? So the mayor is getting a Frank filter, and Frank is giving us a filtered version of the mayor too. So we are getting manipulated and filtered with all kinds of nonsense all the time, right? So no, I don't report directly to the mayor.
Okay.
And I think that's very intentional, because in a lot of ways, I have an ability to make the mayor nervous. So it just is what it is. And it's because of how I came in, and I was confrontational, and then I came into a relatively trusted position, but not in that inner circle, right? I've never been in the inner circle. So Frank is all of the bosses for he's the chief administrative officer. He oversees all the administrative portfolio.
Okay.
So in the meeting, we're talking about trust, the Frank filter, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just like, what are you looking for? And I say, look, here's the deal. Frank Kaliva needs to resign. And if he doesn't resign, he needs to be terminated. And it needs to happen today. Right? And they get real nervous. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no. Look, have I ever said Frank was honest? No. I always have said he was a liar. I learned to deal with it. I learned to manage it like a professional. I talked to him. I just dealt with it. I came with the expectation that I was not getting the truth. Right? And I was like, have I ever told you, in that whole experience, have I ever told you that Frank Kaliva needs to resign or be terminated? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, I'm telling you. And we go back and forth in the trust. And I'm like, look, here's the deal with the trust. Can you trust me? Which, by the way, pretty much immediately upon leaving this meeting, I'm like, how dare they ask me if they can trust me instead of saying, can you trust us? because it would have produced a dramatically different conversation where I would have been honest and they could have addressed the actual things I was worried about, but they didn't. So we have this conversation instead. And I said, here's the deal. If I was you and Frank is still here, I wouldn't trust me. And they didn't like that. They did not like that shit, right? So we go back and forth, and I give them the kind of the stuff I just gave you about the Frank filter. I'm like, you got a record. Because so then they do this thing where they say, now the deputy mayor comes in. She's been silent. She joins in. And in a lot of ways, the deputy mayor has been like, my homegirl, right? Like, I get along with her in private. She's not my boss. I don't work with her a whole lot.
Yeah.
I didn't work with her at all until I got given until I got given minority affairs, which I turned into the Division of Equity, Compliance, and Social Impact. And then I would occasionally touch base. But really, the way I talked to her was I would always pass through that senior staff corridor, and I would just chit-chat almost every day with people, including the deputy mayor. So over time, especially after I got given that different responsibility, I built a relationship. And anyway, so Sharon now joins in, and she says, Tim, you come to my office, and in a lot of ways, you feel like my brother. Mm-hmm. And she's like, but this job is all compromise. You have to compromise every day. Every day, I have to compromise. And I'm just like, holy shit. She's giving me like a sellout speech. Like, this lady is running for mayor, and she's giving me a sellout speech. And and then she leans in. Like the way I said Frank, leaned in. He leaned too far. She leans in and she says, Tim, you are self-righteous to a fault. Mm-hmm. And that makes you really dangerous. And you've got this personality that is like fixated on little perceived injustices. And the mayor at some point says, like, for your beloved city, as if it's like demeaning. So anyways, that I think they said that before the Frank filter conversation, because that was when I was like, look, here's the deal. Frank is I was like, I can actually understand some of those characteristics. Like, in a sense, I do feel a sense of self-righteousness because of my care for the city. Yeah. But I actually think that's like a healthy perspective for like your budget director. But in a way, I really feel like that moment was like waterfall between the deputy mayor and I, because I was like, I can't believe she just did this. And we go back and forth, and I go through the Frank filter with them and how basically make it really clear that they're getting a filtered version of me from Frank, and he uses different personality characteristics of his staff to kind of like maintain his own control and to undermine the credibility of the people who work for him with the people who are above him. And I was like, so you're getting a Frank filter of me? And I was like, but I got to tell you, I'm getting a Frank filter of you. So, like, you got to understand that my perspective of you is flavored by the way he manages in his approach, right? And so they go, oh. And then the mayor says something to the effect, because he, remember I called him on November 6th.
Yeah.
I emailed the corporation counsel, which he doesn't read, and in a couple times between those, I was in meetings with him where I spoke just like this. And I took out my phone, and I said, I wrote the privileged and confidential thing. You want to read it? You can just read it. And every time he said, I don't want to read it. Every time, right? So anyways, he said that when I told the story to Frank's face, he thought I said I went and gave the book to the council instead of I went to talk to Frank about the book. I'm like, what? I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, I've said it consistently, and I've said it to everyone from the beginning. The common council? Yeah, like I went upstairs and gave the book the first day to the council. I'm like, no, that's not true. He's like acting like he misheard it. And then he goes, well, why wouldn't you just tell me directly? And I'm like, what kind of finger trap are we in? And in that moment, I had almost forgotten about November 6th calling him, right? Because I'm like, I've gone through shitload too at the same time, and maybe he had forgotten, in all honesty. I don't know, but I definitely remember, and it's definitely there. But, the mayor, what was I saying?
You're saying that basically the Sharon Owens, you have to compromise. Everything is a compromise, and you just don't compromise.
Oh, so at the end, they say, why don't you tell me? I was like, well, I did what we're basically told to do, which is you send it to the corporation counsel and you write privileged and confidential in the subject so it's not foilable, right? And he goes, because it has to do with litigation. And he goes, well, why wouldn't you just tell me directly? And I'm like, okay, because I've learned that there are times you don't want me to tell you directly. And he was kind of like, okay. And then, so the meeting kind of wraps, and I'm like, whoa, what's the deal? What are we doing? Right? Like,
right.
What are you doing, and when are you doing it? And he goes, well, based on this conversation, I could tell you that it's hard for me to imagine not having you as my budget director. And I'm like, well, what? Okay. And I go, well, what's the process for moving forward? He goes, I don't have a process. And I go, well, what's the timeline? And he goes, I don't have a timeline, but I tend to be slow with these things. And that's how it ends. Monday
at 11.
So that's like, it was the 13th on Friday, so it's like the 16th. And then, so then they talk to Cannizzaro on the Tuesday. They do the same thing to him, just those two and him. And he goes through all the shit, and I've been in lockstep. Like, in a way, we have symmetry, and we are protected by each other. If we didn't have each other, we would be fucked. Because we would have just been like pushed aside, fired, whatever. Yeah. But there's two of us, and we're like the two people who can sign everything. Right. And it's to the point where Cannizzaro has communicated to the mayor, I have to sign off on these like audit things that say I have no knowledge of fraud occurring with the organization. I couldn't sign it today. Can't sign it, right? So he has his meeting, and he brings a prepared statement where he largely, let's say, documents the meeting on Friday and kind of goes through this like the different stuff around me, like. Just really being like, Frank has created like an incredibly hostile work environment. Like he lies, he does all this stuff. He ignores your advice, he steamrolls you. He like has many outbursts with direct reports. He tries to like physically intimidate them when they're like at the end of the lies and everything else. And he just really leans in and like, in a way I felt like he was, because I've helped him through it. He's been so stressed, and I'm the one going to him, helping him like, we're truly like friends and colleagues.
I don't know the person at all.
Yeah, Cannizzaro. He also went to Henniger. So his brother was a year younger than me and was like the valedictorian or salutatorian in that class. So he's younger than that. I didn't know him, but he's a smart dude.
What's Ken's college experience?
Cannizzaro. Mike Cannizzaro. He went to Cornell with Mike Green.
Oh, okay.
That's how
Same program?
A good program. I don't remember the program.
Industrial labor relations.
I don't know, but he's a CPA.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay. I didn't realize he's a CPA.
No, he's a CPA.
Okay. CPA is very aware of ethics.
Yeah. So Tuesday happens. Frank's still here. Like, and now they tell Cannizzaro that he's off the EY project. Because the EY project is supposed to launch. It's supposed to go live January 1. And the whole time I've been like, that's fake. Go talk to anyone. This is a disaster. And Cannizzaro's been in all-out blitz. We can't go live. And Frank is the one who's saying, we have to go live. We're going live. And all the consultants now are also scrambling because, in theory, their contract ends in January, and they're supposed to have a deliverable, and the fucking thing is a disaster. And so it's like highly stressed environment, right? And anyways, by Wednesday, like maybe Tuesday night, it becomes very clear to me that they have no intention of getting rid of Frank Khalifa. Mm-hmm. Right? Very clear. And it's, at best, they will separate me from him and potentially Cannizzaro from him by doing a quote-unquote reorganization.
Right.
And I'm just like, fuck that. I told them, Norm, to their face, if Frank Khalifa is here, don't trust me, right? And at that point, people are asking about EY. And I've been talking to like Libinati about the numbers, about the performance, about this is not real, this is not gonna launch, this is watch. He just sent this launch email, it's not gonna launch. But I haven't told anybody about a whistleblower. Like at that point, it is hush, hush, right? So, So I talk to a few people in my network and get different advice, and they're all telling me pretty much the same thing, that they're definitely not getting rid of Frank, because Frank knows all their shit. So you can't send him to the wolves, because then he's got, like, whatever. What then happens? Like, I know a little bit. I really just know this. He's the one who's been their actor, right? Doing a lot of their, the what I would call the most questionable things, or he's kind of like one of their main, he's the main person. Like, I would almost describe in the council, the department heads get up, they explain things to the best of their ability, and honestly, whenever a department head shuts up and a senior staffer comes up, it's to confuse, evade, and lie at worst, right? Like, that is the tone, and I think any counselor would say that, right? And so anyways, I'm like, I'm fucked. I don't have any play here because it's all internal. So now I've become like an expert on the fraud policy, right? There's no whistleblower policy. I've become the 3 pages of fraud policy written in 2006. I've read that shit 15 times, and it lacks clarity for what to do when the fraud occurs at this level, right? The fraud policy is basically written as though all fraud is committed by people below senior staff or the mayor. So it doesn't enumerate what to do. It says you can share allegations of fraud with a number of people. The corporation counsel, which I did. The CFO, which I sort of did. I never shared the book with him, but like, whatever. We were collaborating on the finances of it, so he was aware. It says you can give it to the director of personnel. It says you can give it to like a few other people, but they all report to Frank. They all report to Frank, and Frank has demonstrated that he steamrolls everybody, so there's really no point. So there's no one to really share it. And I've already shared it with the Corporation Council, who has done, here's the thing. The Corporation Council literally moonlights 1 day a week. It's sort of a joke. And then, so none of this gets real. It's all anecdote, and she values Frank's testimony over that of the CFO and the budget director. And they don't look at any emails. There's no, like, is the book real? Are these real emails? They don't pull any of Frank or EY's emails, right? Like, right there, material problem. Then in their presentation of the thing, they basically say that Kelsey May, who is described in this woman's paperwork as a plant by EY, that she's the one who sought the waiver and managed the contract, but she left 3 months before the waiver was given. So Frank Kaliva, it's his vacancy. He's carrying it, and then he's the one who literally treats the sub as the prime and the prime as the sub and has no communication. Oh, I forgot to say. In the meeting, the first meeting, November 6th, the lady comes. She wrote a book about narcissists because they're talking about Trump just getting elected. I wrote a book about narcissists, blah, blah, blah. That's a little wild. Now she gives us a book. And she starts by telling the deputy mayor and my impact analyst, I got paid $1 million by the city of Syracuse. I never stepped foot in this building until today, and I've never been on a single Zoom. That's literally what she said. That's where I was like, what the fuck is going on? $1 million? How the fuck did she get paid $1 million? Like, I'm just like, and this is where it's kind of been like an alphabet soup in IT with Frank just steamrolling everything the whole time. And like,
this is Kelsey May? Who is this woman?
My person?
Yeah, this lady's got $1 million.
Oh, Advanced IT. This woman, Susan, she's the owner of Advanced IT. It's a local woman company in Solvay. So anyways, I'm like, this is crazy, but what the fraud policy does enumerate is you can't retaliate against somebody who carries forth valid, like, whatever it is, a serious, like, I don't know, it's not that it has to be real, it's that it's substantive, right? It can't be a frivolous allegation. You're not protected for like frivolous allegations, but you're definitely protected for like serious, this is definitely a serious corroborated thing, right? So anyways, I'm just like, what the fuck do I do? And I'm reading this book by Nassim Taleb, because I've been trying to manage the stress. I go to the gym at the OPP basement every day during the day. And I get on the elliptical and I go hard for 30 minutes and I do push-ups and I go back. And I've been trying to do the same thing with my mind. I've been trying to read an hour every day, right? And I've been reading a lot of Dan Brown because it's like easy to escape into a Dan Brown book. But anyways, I started reading this book called Skin in the Game. And he talks about symmetry and the danger of asymmetry. right? And basically all systems are corrupted by asymmetry. That's why government has these different levels in order to try to keep it honest. And I'm like, man, I got no symmetry. Everything goes to the executive, and the executive's involved, so they're not allowing it to come out. And I just go, what do I do? So that night at like 1 a.m, so it's like Wednesday morning, I write to Alex Marion, the city auditor, and I say, I need to meet you tomorrow at 8 a.m. And he's like, I can't meet at 8, but I can be there at 8:45. And he's now hearing whispers from different people just about UI. He doesn't know shit about anything else. And so I tell him, I'm like, make sure there's another person in your office. You come to my office and just make sure you got a staffer in your office. So he comes to my office, I have a book on the table. And I'm like, Alex, here's the deal. Like, I'm aware of these allegations of fraud, and I have this book. And I basically hand him my phone and have him read. I'm like, you have to read my confidential and privileged thing. From now, how long ago? It's like, I think it's either 30 or 45 days. I forget the timing. It must have been 45 days. I think it's December 21st at this point. We move forward, and it's like basically December. It's been 45 days since I've had this fucking book. And he's like, can I have the book? And I'm like, what? I was like, well, you're an independently elected person. Like, I can't really stop you, but you can take the book for 30 minutes, and you got to bring it back. And I'm like, I'm going to have this staffer who doesn't know what's in the book just walk with you and make sure the book comes back. And so he does whatever, and I assume he makes a copy, right?
Yeah.
So he brings me the book back. At that point, Councilor Hogan, who is the pro tem of the council, and mind you that the president is typically in charge of the rules and all these kind of things, but she's been ill. She's not like, she's basically on leave. So the pro tem takes over as the president, and so he performs a lot of functions. So, and obviously I know Hogan from being on the council, so Hogan calls me. And he's like, Timmy, what the fuck is going on, right? Like, what's going on with this stuff? And I just lean in. I'm just like, well, and oral diarrhea, right? And I'm jazzed for that. And I'm like, Hogan, this, that, fraud, other thing, blah, blah, blah. He's like, holy shit, Timmy, you got to give me that book so I can protect you. I'm like, Hogan, you are a freely elected, you're an independently elected person. Like, I'm in my office. The book's on the table. Like, if you come and take it, I'm not stopping you, but I need the book back, right? So Hogan, 10 minutes later, walks through my office, suited up, takes the thing, goes wherever, makes copies, brings it back, right? Hogan instantly shares it with Syracuse.com and their lawyer and other people. So that's Wednesday. So Thursday, midday, Frank is still in all the meetings at this point. They've said they've taken him off the team. He's still in all the meetings. He's still trying to get the launch. He's still micromanaging the shit out of Mike Cannizzaro, everything else. So around midday, is my understanding, the auditor reaches out to the mayor and says, I'm in possession of a whistleblower report. It's in practice, whatever, beyond my scope. To be able, and my original recommendations were terminate the contracts in that original thing that I had Alex read, terminate the contracts, redo the things, and share all of it with the state attorney general's office so a proper independent investigation can be done, because you really have to have access to the EY stuff as well. Like, you can't do it with only, like, it's totally, so Alex comes to that conclusion within 24 hours, right? They've had that for 45 days, and they haven't even checked to see if the emails are real, right? They've just relied on testimony. Right. And they're like materially wrong because they don't share with anybody who knows what they're doing. And the mayor and the deputy mayor still haven't read the damn book, right? I don't know if the deputy mayor has read it. I can't speak for her, but the mayor definitely has not read it. And where are we at?
So you got Hogan goes to.
Hogan shares it. So Alex writes to them and says, "I've got this book. I can't do it. I can't. It's beyond my ability in this office. I've shared it with the state attorney general's office."
So actually, he made the right decision.
That's what I think. I was like, but I didn't actually think I was like surprised. He's a PR person who's the auditor who does a lot of stuff and it's very attention and stuff. So sharing it with the state attorney general is totally the responsible thing for him to do.
Absolutely.
Right. So, anyways, so right then, and I am in all out, right? Like I am actively courting data, corroborating everything, and I am a leaky faucet on everything but the book, right? Mm-hmm. I'm like, here's the budget, here's the spending, here's the contracts, here's the timing, here's the emails, here's the screenshots, here's the everything. I am fucking unloading to other people, right? And so anyways, when they find out, that's when they have the first meeting without Frank Oliva. And this is when the mayor says he made the decision that Frank would be leaving on Thursday night. And he thinks that he basically says he made the decision before, which is totally false. Like, you can just look at all the things. Like, he definitely was not getting rid of Frank until that happened. But in practice, that becomes, I don't know, it's called the death blow for me, right? So, and I'm at this point, I don't want to say trolling the mayor, but I have become empowered, right? Like, I'm not afraid of you people at all. Because if you retaliate against me, I'm going to sue the shit out of this place, right? Like, I'm going to sue for my salary till I fucking retire, plus my pension, plus the lawyer costs, like, all fucking day. And pretty quickly they realize that I'm empowered, right? I've been standing my ground, but now I'm like, don't fuck with me. But it definitely destroys this trust, so to speak. And it does it both ways. So they don't trust me, and I don't trust them. But anyways, so right at that time, I know instantly from my talking with people that the auditor has shared this with the mayor. So I know they're in crisis mode. I know, I can see everything, right? I can see schedules, I am close enough that through my network, I know exactly what they're working on. Like, I can see things, right? And so I know they're doing it. And my son's been in Vancouver, Canada, for the fall. I haven't seen him.
Right.
So I'm going to get him. Like, and I'm taking the whole time off from that day till at least January 2nd, right? Like, I've just, in a way, created a bomb, and I've said, I'm going away for the holidays. And I write to the mayor, and I say so much, right? And I literally write to him, and I say, I have heard that both the city auditor and the council have somehow gotten the book. I basically tell him. And I said, I've heard they shared it with the media and the lawyer and the state attorney general's office. And I say, this has been a very, he's like, this might sound strange, but given the amount of stress I've been under from this, in a way, hearing that makes me feel relief, right? And then I say, I'm going to get my son, I'm taking the time off, I'll be back the second light touch, maybe out till the 6th. And that's what I do. But and then so I do that, which definitely alienates them, right? They're in crisis management mode, which is all PR spin, which is what most of their operation is. So they're in theory, they were going to have a meeting with the council, but they definitely didn't know that the council had the book. They only know that the auditor has the book. So I'm like, oh my God, they're going to perjure themselves in the meeting with the council. The council's read it. They don't think they've read it. They're going to tell them the same bullshit that they told me. And so I basically write to him, and I say, like, hey, I heard that you're going into executive session, that somebody's going into executive session with the council about this issue. You should be aware that the council has the book, right? Because I'm trying to help him in a way. And that pisses him, that's more, right? Because now I'm just trolling him in a way. But, and then I basically have my holidays, and I do whatever, and like, it goes, and it takes its course. Now there's an article written, there's about the whole project, and about the delay, and about the money, and which causes more crisis, and it's the holidays, so no one wants to work, and now they're all having to work because of this bullshit. Like, they're fucking stressed, and stressed. And the mayor has worked with Frank Kaliva for his entire professional life, for 20 years. Like, Frank was basically his first boss. Yeah. He's never lived. That's why the culture is normal for Ben, right? Like, this is what he views as normal. He knows how Frank is. He knows. Yeah. This is all an act. Like, the mayor gets to be the nice guy, while Frank and Sharon and Corey are the henchmen, right? And they do the misinformation, they do the confusion, and they do the steamrolling and the intimidating, and then they'll lie, right? That's what they do. Yeah. And the mayor gets to stay clean all the time, right? Oh, whatever.
How did it ever get up to $10 million? That's what the common council.
Because there's no, it's like they're making it. Oh, it was the payroll, but it's this HCM. But it, like Frank does, he does it. You almost have to watch it to believe it. It's like insane.
But he'd have to get the common council to.
Because he gives them a waiver. Like, you can watch. There's a hearing. I kind of forget the exact date right now. I think it's like May 27th of 2023, where he seeks the waiver. And in the waiver, Helen, the president, says, "Why all the waivers? What's the deal with the waiver?" And he goes, "Well, it's not really a waiver. They won an RFP before," which is all a fucking lie, right? He does this like intentional misinformation in order, and he says we've already been working. Like, he does all these things. It seems like confusion, but it's just manipulation, right? And the council's like a part-time body, and they don't have it. So to the extent they're lying to you, it's kind of hard to know.
Right.
But she asked the fucking question. She asked the right fucking question. It was almost like remarkable, right? And
yeah.
So, New Year, New Year. So Amari's with me, and I keep thinking about Lawful Citizen on this movie with Jamie Foxx, who's a DA assistant DA in Philly, and it's like a very righteous. Anyways, a lot of it's way more extreme. We're talking about like financial stuff basically, yeah. But like many of the roles are resonating with me, right? So in here, let's just still recording. So I just feel like this highlights it. So New Year's Eve, I put my wife's on a 24-hour shift. I put the small kids to sleep. I've rented the movie from the library. Law-abiding citizen, that's what it's called. Mm-hmm. And so I get Amari, he's 12, well, we're gonna watch this movie, right? And it ends up being better than I remember, like more appropriate than I remember. Because it's all this like, I feel like I'm in a position in my life where I'm unapologetic about my family. Like, I prioritize my family, and I think that's one of the main reasons I wasn't running for mayor, because I was afraid of sacrificing my family. In the last race I did, it was fucking stressful in my family. In part because my mother-in-law's with us, and she's like dying, and we're caring for her 24 hours, and we have young baby kids, and we have all this stuff going on. We got a lot. My wife has just changed careers to become like a paramedic. Like, it was probably too much. Like, honestly, it was probably a mistake. It ends up being something I learned a lot from, but whatever. And in the movie, they kind of talk about this. It's kind of like family has to be first, and if you don't value family, then you don't have any moral rock to stand on, right? So on New Year's Eve, after all this stuff, I say to Sharon, and what I think is brave, I say, "Happy New Year, Sharon. We may have to get a coffee and hug it out, but I believe in you. I trust myself, and so does," because this trust thing, I was like, "I trust myself, and so does my wife, and so do my children, and so does my dad, and so does my staff. I can't speak for many others. And I believe this city is better off with my self-righteousness than without. I don't speak or maybe even want the trust of Ben Walsh. That ship is 7/8 done. But I believe in the end, you will be able to trust me as much or more than anyone else, because I'm here to make the city better. And yes, I love this city unapologetically. Today I stopped by the office to sign some things and speak with Dave Proack. It sort of stressed me out, so I came home, spent the next 4 hours working outside with my boys, picking up trash and sticks and playing in the park, because that's what truly makes me happy. And yes, I'm different, and that's my value. I think deep down you see that. Much success, health, and yes, wealth to both of us in the new year, and may we figure out how to do it together. Happy New Year, Tim. So a few hours later, she says, yes, we need to talk. Self-righteousness wrongfully assumes. And that's part of the thing with the trust conversation. They keep telling me they have a very high moral standard. We have a very high moral standard here. We have a very high moral standard. It was insane. So anyways, she says, self-righteousness wrongfully assumes others are not honest and have no integrity. I looked it up to be sure I'm on target. Self-righteousness, quote, the belief that one's own actions, ideas, or affiliations are morally superior to those of others, end quote. I'm not responsible for how others feel. I'm responsible for me. I know I'm a good person. I know I work hard in the best interest of the city and others, sadly, at the expense of my own family. So no, you are not the only one wanting what's right. The information, the book was given to me, was entrusted to me, and that trust was breached by me. Therefore, I'm living with my own standard of accountability to me, my integrity, and my word. I wasn't given the opportunity to do what I promised. Happy New Year to you and your family. So that, I think, was after the announcement of Frank Khalifa leaving. So it's the day that I go to get Amari, drive down, that they announce Frank's leaving. And my wife's on at 24. So I have both kids in the car, which I never do. I have the little kids in the car going down. So at 9:30, the mayor calls me. And I'm driving, I answer. He says, because the night before, that was the night before I had sent the message about the council has it, everybody, and I sent it at like 1 a.m, right? Like I sent it, it's like, hey, FYI, right? And I sent it at 1 in a way to get his attention, right? To be like, yo, pay attention. And to communicate that I was driving and all this shit and off. But he calls me and he's like, got your message. And Frank is resigning. It'll be effective January 2nd. I don't want you to tell anybody right now. Whatever. It'll come out soon in a couple hours. Then you can know it. And he's like, clearly we have problems. We have some problems. We have a project that's a bomb. And he's like, I just need your full ability and buy-in to fix it. And I'm like, 100%. That's all I've ever wanted. I want to fix it, right? And he's like, all right, good to hear. All right, well, safe travels, whatever, hang up. That's at 9:30. So I do the whole day. We're on the way back. I got Amari. It's 4 o'clock. At like 3:40, Teresa, my admin assistant, says, the deputy mayor just came looking for you. I'm like, what? As if the mayor didn't tell her about my message, right? As if. So she comes looking for me. I'm like, and I have like 4 of my staff who are in my inner circle, so they know everything, right? Because I gotta talk to somebody to deal with it all. So I'm like, oh shit. So 4 o'clock, Sharon calls me, and she is fucking pissed, right? She's like, Tim, what is the deal? How does the media have the book? And I'm like, Sharon, I don't know how the media has the book, but it's out there. And she's like, out there? How is it out there? And I'm like, I don't know how it's out there, Sharon, but it's out there. And she's like, I don't understand. I have a copy of the book. Sue Katzoff has a copy of the book, and you have a copy of the book. How's the book out there? I'm like, I don't know, but it's out there, Sharon. And I'm driving, okay? I'm picking up my kids have been in Vancouver. You're on speaker. Like, I'm coming home. I've been driving all day. What do you want? What's your question? What's the deal? And it's just a long pause. 45 seconds, 60 seconds, a long, uncomfortable time. And finally she's like, did you make copies of the book and distribute it? And I'm like, fuck no, I didn't make copies of the book and distribute it. What the fuck? And she hangs up. Right? So that was what she had done before I sent that message. That's why I'm sending the message, because of all I've gone through. But where she really lost me is when she said she sacrifices her family every day.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you are fucking consciously sacrificing your family. And then I was like, you know what? I don't have to sacrifice my family. It was like an empowering moment. I was like, I will never sacrifice my fucking family. And that's why I have the moral standing to actually do this job. And not for nothing, I'm officially to the point where, yes, I think I have actually, like, I do have to be self-righteous because you lack the moral authority to do what's right. And after 7 years, I don't think I'm the smartest person in the world. I try to talk to lots of smart people to be around me, but I definitely am to the point where I think I'm smarter than those 5 people in that senior staff, right? Like, this shit is bonkers. And, I don't know, you see me.
I always say you don't have to be the smartest, but you have to hire the smartest.
You gotta hire the smartest. So, oh my God, we're in crisis, right? And I'm like, I'm talking to my wife, everything. I'm like, look, I'm open to the possibilities of everything. Like, and then I get this dude who I work with, I got a good relationship with, but he's Connor. He works in API. He's not a director. He's got a difficult job. He's kind of, I would say he's earned the trust of the senior staff in a way. And in the way that I don't have, right? But he's smart, and I can deal with him because the same way I dealt with Frank for a long time. I just kind of know how to be clear and set like appropriate. Anyways, Connor asked me to go get a beer on one of the days I'm off, and I'm like, okay, well, I have kids, but I can bring them if we go to Harvey's Garden. We can go upstairs. So we do, and he basically tells me he took his shot with the mayor to basically get Frank's job, because I had always told him, I was like, I think there's opportunity in this carnage for you because you are smart and you are trusted by them.
What's his last name?
Muldoon. He's an East Sider. Like, he's a person who in a good culture would be a great asset. And in a broken culture, he adopts to the culture, in my opinion, which is why he has their trust. But I can deal with him. Anyway, so he tells me this, and I'm like, wow, because I've said I need a barrier. I now have no barrier between the senior staff fucking disaster and myself. So I need almost someone as like, just to like be a buffer at this point, right? Like, it is bad. So I'm like, maybe Connor could be that, and I'm definitely like, whatever. But anyways, I leave the meeting, and I'm like, man, fuck that. I am the one that should be the Frank's job. I didn't even want this job for the longest time, but now I have all the relationships with all the people, and I have trusted relationships with all the people involved, and I have trusted relationships with the council. So I basically, I think I met with Connor on Thursday, so Friday I decided I gotta apply for the job, even though it's not posted or anything. So I basically take my resume, I send a letter outlining exactly why I think I'm qualified. I go through like what I can bring, and I send it to the mayor and deputy mayor, which from their perspective is definitely the most audacious thing in the fucking world.
Oh yeah.
Like, I just got their inner circle, basically whatever the fuck happened to him, and I'm applying for the job.
Right.
They cannot fucking understand it, right? So I give them the weekend. I talk about applying for the job with some people, and but I'm like, what's their method? Their method is they always dither and delay. And then now I feel pretty vulnerable, right? Like, Sharon has established that she doesn't trust me, that she can't trust my self-righteousness. I've established that I can't trust her, that I definitely can't trust the mayor. And I know that they have state of the city and all this. There's shit coming up, so they're not going to deal with anything. And that's going to be the strategy. It's going to be isolate me, ignore me. Maybe in a future administration, they can further isolate me or whatever. Right now, it's very hard because they can't take me out of the department head meeting, retaliation. They can't anything. Like, I'm ready to scream retaliation over anything. But the truth is, I would have applied, so I applied. If there hadn't been an event, like, I was like, let's just say it was mismanagement, right? I would have, or let's just say it got dealt with. Let's say that there was symmetry in the fraud policy. Let's say the fraud policy said, if it's at the state, then give it to the auditor and give it to the president or the pro tem, right? If it said that in the policy, they would have known that they have to act differently than they did. But it didn't say it, so it allowed for this ridiculous situation that has destroyed our trust and our relationship. So 11:30. We got to finish by 12:30, which I think I can do. If that's all right with you.
That's fine with me. I have a 1 o'clock show.
Okay, it's perfect. I have to clean the Airbnb in my carriage house for a turnover, which has been doing phenomenal. So anyways, I'm like, they're never going to make a decision. So Tuesday morning, I decide I'm going to go. They have a senior staff meeting every Tuesday, and we have a department head meeting every Wednesday. So the senior staff is just those 5 people or whatever. And I'm like, I'm going to crash senior staff. So I go to work early. I print out 6 copies of the fraud policy. I write up a resignation. I say, due to the events occurring beginning November 6th and continuing to this day, I'm resigning. Wait for it. Effective December 31st, 2025. Right? And then I bring it. I go 20 minutes early. I sit outside the office. The mayor's in a meeting. Greg Lowe's in a meeting. I just sit there. 3 minutes later, Sharon walks through, and she's ice cold. Hello. Goes right past me, which is very different. And I'm like, Sharon, can I get the first 15 minutes of senior staff? And she's like, I don't know. I'll have to check. I know it's a full agenda. She goes back. She checks. 5 minutes later, she comes. She says, she shakes her head. No. I'm like, Sharon, I've worked with all of you in some capacity for 7 years. I've worked in this role for 4 years. Okay, I want the first 15 minutes of senior staff. And she's like, no. And she's like, you can come to my office. And I'm like, no, I want the group. She's like, you can't have the group. No. And I'm like, fine, I'll come to your office. So I go to her office, open my phone, and for the first time in my life, I start recording. And I tell her, I say, Sharon, I'm recording. And I have it, it's 2.5 minutes. And it's basically like me, and I tell her what I told you that I did on that Wednesday, where I basically tell her that same shit. I notified the auditor of a fraud. I notified the pro tem called me. I notified him of a fraud. They both came independently. The book was on my table. They took it. They did what they did. And I was like, I never gave it to the media. Never, ever, ever. Right? And she's fucking really uneasy. Like, you can just hear it in the tone. And she's like, I don't want to be recorded. I don't want to be recorded. At one point, I'm like, then don't talk. Right? Like, don't talk. Let me talk. And she's just like, no. And then I'm like, I'm like, okay, well, if you want me to come back to the meeting, just let me know. I'll happily come back. Right? So I leave, and then I go to a meeting. So an hour and a half later, or whatever, a couple hours later, it's like 11. All of a sudden, I don't remember where I'm talking to somebody. Maybe I'm talking to Canizaro. I went and I talked to Canizaro, and I give them all the updates, because we got to have symmetry. We got to be on board, because otherwise they're going to do what they do. So just finished talking to Canizaro, and all of a sudden, like, my phone's blowing up, or the mayor's looking for you, go to him immediately. All right, problem. Like, I went up. He's like, ending me, brings me in, just him and Sue Katzoff. This motherfucker is shook. And I mean shaking, mad. What the hell is this? What the hell are you doing? What the hell? And we go through all the, we go through a lot, and I don't have it in me to, like, go through the whole thing. But he's shook. I'm bulletproof at this point, right? Like, well, I'm honestly like, well, this is the moment where I either get fired and I sue the shit out of the city.
Right.
Or I don't get fired and I officially know I'm bulletproof. Right? So in that conversation, Sue's there and the mayor's there. That's it. And he's like, are you recording me? No, I'm not recording you. No. Now they're afraid, right? Because I tell them this thing. So now they think I've recorded all kinds of shit, right? Because I've just basically been like, look, I'm not afraid to fucking record, right? And it's my right. And they know the fucking truth. It's true. And they know all the dumb shit they've been telling me. So now they're fucking shook. And he's like, why would you do this? And I was like, well, one, because I don't like being here because, like, you can't fire me, right? I don't like that. So I want whoever's the next mayor to hire me for my merit, not because they're afraid to deal with me because of a fraud, right? So that's why, right? And I'm like, and I think I can help. Like, I'm open to it, right? So what I wanted to do that day is give them my pitch, and I wanted to say, I want to tell the truth, and I want you to introduce me as the new chief administrative officer in the state of the city. If you introduce me as the new chief administrative officer in the state of the city, and I get to talk however I want about the truth, I'll do it, and I'll fix things, right? And this guy is like, you know what? A couple months ago, I would have given you this job, but not after the last couple months. But what the fuck happened the last couple months? The last couple months have been me talking about the fraud. Like, what the fuck? He's literally retaliating against me in the meeting. Right. And he just says, you're not getting that job. Right? And this dude is pissed and shook. Like, and Sue is fucking quiet. like Sue is like. And now Sue's been through it a few times with me, right? Because Sue's thinking this ain't a big deal, ain't a big deal. And I just stick to my shit, and I stay in my lane, and I don't give up. So she's seen it a few times now. And this guy, we go back and forth, back and forth. There's a point where I said, well, I'm going to sue. And Sue goes, you don't have any standing to sue. And I'm like, that I think was before the threat about the job, but I'm like, well, Sue, you know what? I agree with you. I don't currently have standing because you haven't retaliated against me yet. But if you retaliate against me in any form, I'm going to sue the shit out of the city that I love so much. Right? And I'm talking just like this. And they're just like, what the fuck? And then he's like, so then after he's like, you're not getting the job. And I'm like, that's cool. No quid pro quo from me, right? Like, it is what it is. I'm happy to have my job and do my job. So I'll do my job. And we go back and forth a bit. And it kind of just, like, fizzles out. It's like, he doesn't know what else to say. I've said what I got. And he's asking me about different proof. What other proof do I have of the fraud? I tell him he told me and all the evidence and blah, blah, blah. And on that day, this is January 7th, however many 2 months. 2 months and a day after getting the book, he actually says, am I the last person to not read the book? I'm like, I didn't say this out loud. I'm like, you stupid motherfucker. You got rid of the guy that you worked for 20 years and you didn't read the fucking book yet? No. Are you out of your fucking mind? And he actually has the audacity in that meeting to accuse me of creating plausible deniability by having the council share it with the media, so that if I shared it with the media, it wouldn't be. I was just like, this is fucking cheeky, right? But anyways, we just go through it and it fizzles. We don't got nothing else to say, right? And so I'm like, okay. I get up to go. And I'm pretty much like, I'm bulletproof because they didn't fire me, right? Like, it was like the fire conversation if they were going to do it. And they can't because they're fucked. And I just gave them 6 copies of the fraud policy. So if they weren't thinking about it, they know I'm fucking thinking about it, right? And when I go to leave, he just yells. And he doesn't yell much. He's like, just do your job. Just do your job. And I just turn around and I go, yes, sir. Right? And I go to the door, and he's got a new admin who is actually Sharon's political person who they just hired to become the mayor's secretary, Jakia. And she's very nice. And I'm walking out, and I'm starting to close the door. And he goes, and close the door! And I just go, can you believe these fucking people? They think I'm not going to close the door? I just close the door. I was like, they don't know me at all. And I just walk out. Anyways, I'm like, okay, this is ending. So now I've been thinking about running for mayor a bit.